Good evening and welcome to another edition of Black and Azul Postgame. Charles Wollin alongside Alex Morgan, Jamon Moore, Joel Soria, Jason Sholl commanding the ship from his producer center in his house. The Quakes drop an important game tonight, a Western Conference playoff six-pointer, if you will. They led 1-0 at the end of the first half. We're pretty much in control of this game until a 6-minute span in the second half after an Ali Adnan free kick and a Tosaint Ricketts goal, about 6 minutes apart from one another, just in between 51 and 58 minutes in this game. They were not able to recover. Let's go ahead and take a look at the standings and what it means right now for the Quakes. They fall down to that 8th playoff position right there. You can see them just above the line. Real Salt Lake, they tied today, meaning that the Quakes just escaped by the skin of their teeth there, and they'll face Real Salt Lake on Wednesday in a pivotal playoff game, joined, of course, by the rest of the team to break it all down. What the heck does it mean? But a disappointing, frustrating night for this Earthquakes team, especially after going up 1-0, very much in control, again, of this game, especially possession-wise. And the first word goes to Joel Soria. Good evening.
Good evening, Charles. Good evening, Alex, Jamon, and everyone watching us at the moment. Look, this is definitely a disappointing and I would dare to say unexpected outcome for the San Jose Earthquakes, complicating their way into the 2020 Western Conference playoffs race. I think that the Quakes looked formidable in the first half, in the first 45 minutes. One could have thought to themselves, I think that this team has it in the bag if they keep up the tempo, if they continue to attack in the complex way that they're doing so. But the final 45 minutes were a completely different story. The Quakes retained possession. They weren't as dynamic in the final third. And the Vancouver Whitecaps, credit to them, they were able to squeeze two past JT Marcinkowski, one coming off of Ali Adnan. That was just a sublime free kick. And the second, a ball that just found its way in that 6-yard box that was put away by Ricketts. I think there's definitely, I'm sure, a lot of negative sentiments within the Quakes locker room at the moment. But then again, this definitely is a healthy loss. I would dare to say that it's a healthy loss as well, knowing that the Quakes have given up much worse defeats.
Alex Morgan, before we went on air, you said devastating loss. Joel Soria, somewhat healthy loss. Where do we balance those two there, and what do you make of tonight?
Yeah, Charles, I think this one was pretty devastating. I think at this stage in the season, there's just no room for error. There's nothing healthy about a loss like that. The Quakes now, they went from being odds-on favorites to make the playoffs, I think, to being outsiders now. According to 538's odds, they went from 64% to down to 40%. And depending on how MLS decides who makes the playoff with points per game, that could be even lower, honestly. And I mean, Almeyda has engineered such a brilliant turnaround in these last few weeks, and everything had been going their way. But it just felt like the team hit a wall in this second half, and that Almeyda ran out of ideas. And I think the mood is just really gloomy now. It never really felt like the Quakes were going to score, like they could claw their way back. And I'm really quite concerned about how this loss affects their confidence with only 3 games left in the season.
Can I quickly just clarify what I said? I meant healthy loss in the sense that the Quakes didn't concede 5-6 goals against the Vancouver Whitecaps. Devastating in the sense that, yes, this definitely complicates their passage into the playoffs. So I just want to make that very clear here.
Let's get to the statistics a little bit. The Quakes had 62% possession, their passing accuracy 90%. And there were stretches in that second half right after they conceded the Ali Adnan free kick, that there were stretches where they were somewhat devoid of confidence, somewhat just semi-confident. The passes seem to be lacking there, Jamon. In that second half breakdown and in terms of just dominating with possession, what really went wrong there?
Well, first off, it's the Providence Park curse, right? The team has probably very little confidence that they're going to be able to hold a lead in Providence Park, and they're actually, I'm kind of joking, but at the same time, there actually might be some kind of mental blockage about coming into this place and finding a way to get a win, regardless of the fact that everything, on TV says Vancouver Whitecaps. Actually, in the stadium, it says Portland. It looks like Portland, and it's nice and virtual reality for us, but for the players, they know very well that they're in Providence Park. Tonight, the players who have been picking them up had been quite a bit on the outside backs. Obviously, Fierro and Rios coming in had both had some pretty good games. Fierro's with a fantastic goal in the first half. In the second half, though, it was the outside backs that let them down. I think particularly Nick Lima not only gave up a foul that he didn't need to give up in a dangerous situation where balls can get up and down over walls, no matter how good you set up a wall there. The issue is really more that in the passing game, they were a part of the problem in being able to have the type of passing that was dangerous in the first half. And I think they were removed partially for fitness and just trying to get on some subs and some life. But unfortunately, when those subs came on, they don't have the same cohesiveness that the team in the first half has in terms of their ability to work together. Why? Because Almeyda hasn't put too many people, other people other than his starters, onto the field more recently. And so it felt very disjointed, and they weren't able to ever look dangerous in the second half like a goal was coming. And so once they gave up the second goal, that was pretty much the end of the game, because they never threatened after that. They only had 2 shots on goal tonight against the Vancouver Whitecaps, who typically they pepper for quite a few shots on goal.
Let's talk about what it means going into the next 3 games. RSL at home, followed up by a weekend match against LAFC. And then a week later, the Quakes will take on Seattle Sounders away. Seattle Sounders, they are in second position in the West right now. And basically, it's just 3 big games to secure your spot at this point in the playoffs, maybe be able to get some good results to potentially host, but that window is closing and closing very quickly. At this point, it's probably just try to get in.
I think that's absolutely right, Charles. Their path to the playoffs looks a lot more narrow right now. I think if they don't win on Wednesday against Real Salt Lake, I don't see a way back for them because right now they're 8th in the table. I think we can pull up the standings again, but what I'm looking for is points per game. Because of the way that this season has played out, not all of the teams are going to end up with the same number of games played, which means that it's very likely MLS will decide who makes the playoffs based on points per game. And right now, I think if they don't beat Real Salt Lake, they're going to be below Real Salt Lake in terms of points per game. They'll also be below the Colorado Rapids in terms of points per game. So they'll certainly be on the outside looking in at this point.
It looks like the difference there, if you could pull that back up quickly, Jason, it looks like the difference here really with Vancouver Whitecaps, they're now tied in a number of categories, including that points per game. But now it's going to come down to a goal differential type situation and other tiebreakers. So, it's these games, they need to get the results in, but they also need to be able to work on that goal differential a bit just in case it's needed as another tiebreaker.
Let's talk a little bit about the substitutions tonight. We've talked about it a little bit before, and sometimes they've been needed. Sometimes I don't think that Almeyda wants to change his team. And quite frankly, I agree with that, certainly in the back line. We saw Kay Cowell tonight. We saw Saeed Haji tonight. We saw Marco Lopez as well come off of the bench, and we saw Shea Salinas. And I guess my question is, and I'll start with Joel, and I know, Alex, you want to touch on this, is I was a little bit confused as to why Marco Lopez didn't start this game, especially after some very good performances going into the international break. I understand he has to quarantine when he comes back from playing with Peru, but I get you don't also change a team that's been doing quite well. That was a little bit of a question mark for me at that left back spot. And I just want to talk a little bit about these substitutions as well as the game was on the line here.
Yeah, eventually I was going to touch on that, Charles. You and I were talking about this during the game, and how do you not start Marcos Lopez in such an important match? I would have done it. I think many of us, if not all of us on the show, would have decided to play Lopez over Tommy Thompson, considering the form that Lopez has been in with the team, and given that he actually was able to accumulate some minutes with the Peruvian national team. I would have played him in a heartbeat. I think that it was a fundamental mistake from Almeyda to not start Lopez tonight in such an important match. That if there were players on the field who looked a bit weaker than others, it had to be the fullbacks. I thought Lima and Thompson had below average games. I mean, the statistics show it as well. They didn't stand out today. Whereas, in the past couple of games, that's been the Quakes' forte. But this time around, they were vulnerable. And I think really what was missing mostly from those fullbacks, and in particular from Thompson, was that bite on the offensive side of the game. And we know that Lopez had been building confidence, had been earning that trust by pushing forward and actually being a bit more daring on the ball. I thought that when I was looking at the starting 11, I thought to myself, this looks like the strongest 11. But then I quickly remembered that Lopez was absent. And I really couldn't wrap my head around why Lopez wasn't on that 11 to begin with.
And Joel, I agree with you, but at the same time, we've seen this from Matías Almeyda before. It's a broken record at this point. Every time someone goes out for international duty for whatever reason, they have to play their way back in. He goes with the people he's seen on the field. And frankly, Tommy Thompson, the last 2-3 games, has actually looked pretty good at left back. So I actually expected that from Matías Almeyda, although I agree. Marcos Lopez, for me, was a must start because these were, must get points for the playoff race. And now the Quakes have put themselves in a position of having to get wins in both of the home games, because you can't guarantee you're going to go into CenturyLink Field and be able to get a win against the Sounders on decision day. So, the stress was to get a result, and particularly a win in this game. A draw didn't actually do anything. It actually would reduce the points per game number in this potential type of tiebreaker. And so that was definitely, a problem. But I think it'll be interesting to see where Matías goes from here. I have a strong hunch that we will see Marcos Lopez back in the starting lineup in the next game.
I absolutely agree, Jamon. And I think in hindsight, it's easy to say that Marcos Lopez absolutely should have started. I think I don't disagree with Almeyda's decision to start him. When I looked at that starting lineup, I thought it was the best lineup that the Quakes had. Almeyda usually doesn't make changes after players come back from the international break, as Jamon was saying. But for me, it was the substitutions that were the problem. It was after Thompson makes that pretty catastrophic error, the Quakes give up their second goal. It's clear that he's not playing well and it's not working. That's when Almeyda needs to make the change and bring on Marcos Lopez. And he just waited too long. I mean, once again, his substitutions were just pretty confusing, I think. He has no problem with substitutions when the Quakes are in the lead, when they're up 2-3-0. He has no problem throwing out the young guys in those situations. But it just feels like he loses his nerve in some of these big games, and he doesn't know what to do, what to change, how to lift this team when they're losing. I mean, the timing was just way off tonight. He waited until the 71st minute to make any changes, and I think he needed to switch things up at least 10 minutes earlier. And then the changes that he does make are also pretty confusing. Taking off Nick Lima and moving Espinosa to right back was just plain weird, I think. Espinosa was their most dangerous player And then he took Espinosa off altogether and moved Fierro to right back. It didn't make sense to me. I have no idea why he would take off their most dangerous player when they're chasing the lead in a crucial game like that.
Wait, but just a couple of weeks ago, we were all in agreement on how Lopez was one of the Quakes' best things that happened in 2020. And now we're saying that it's totally okay for Matías not to start him in a very crucial match.
I don't think we're saying that. What we're saying is Almeyda's
that's
shown
what I
these cards
from Alex. Now, I will 100% understand Almeyda's reasoning. He's going to say, well, look, Lopez just came back from Peru. He's jet lagged. He's fatigued. There's no rush, right? Whether we take a point, 0 points, 3 points tonight, so be it. We'll have him for the remaining games of the season. But I disagree with that logic. Honestly, that's a theoretical response there from Matías. We'll have to ask him and see what he says. But you have to play him. You have to play him in this situation without a doubt, 100%.
I think what Jamon was also saying was that he has shown that he won't change a side that gets a point or gets a win. And I completely agree with you. What I saw from Marco Lopez, he was quite, he was the best sub that was out there on the field, and he looked like he was ready to go. He had some really nice runs down that left side, especially one in the last 10 minutes of the game where I think he squared the ball up to Wondo or to Andy Rios, who then switched the field over to the right side as well. Let's get on Espinosa. Let's talk about Espinosa. He just became the third all-time assist person with the most amount of assists, over the last 2 years in that third position with 21 assists, thanks to Jake Pisani, who runs the Quakes PR side for putting that out. 21 assists, 2019 and 2020. Just a really nice run by him, really good work by him. Before that, he was extremely dangerous, as you had said, Alex, and a nice finish there by Carlos Fierro. He has his second goal, and then he's got 3 assists so far. But here we have Chris Wondolowski, so we'll have to come back to Espinosa, and we'll hear from the Quakes captain.
We are now joined by forward Chris Wondolowski. We can go ahead and jump right into questions. So let's start with Jamon Moore.
Hey, Chris. Condolences on the loss tonight. You guys looked coming out for the first 45. You were very sharp. Second 45, things seemed to fall apart. Some of the passes that you were able to string together and the possessions you were able to hold in the first half were disrupted quite a bit in the second half. What did you see that happened in the second half that Portland did to change the game in their favor? And how do you prevent that type of thing going forward? Thank you.
I think it was a bit of a combination of a couple things. I think one, Vancouver came out and wanted to press us down the middle, and we kind of played right into the teeth of it, and also just weren't able to connect passes. I think once we did connect a pass, we didn't move after and give us an option. And when we do that, when we become stagnant, we lose a lot of possession and a lot of passes that we shouldn't, and that usually feeds into another team's counterattacks. And they punished us twice, and rightfully so. And then we're playing catch up, and I thought we combined well after that. We just couldn't hit that final pass. We don't know what the numbers were, but I felt like we were trying to get crosses or you're combining all the way up to that final third. But then in the final third, couldn't connect and couldn't shoot, and so it was a tough one.
Thank you, Wando. Let's go to Alicia Rodriguez.
Thank you. Chris, wanted to ask, what lessons can you take from a game like this? And considering last season, you guys were in the playoff hunt until almost the very end, and you came up short. This season, right now, you're in a little bit better position, but there's still some work to do. How are you approaching the final 3 games, with everything to play for right now?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that we do need to fix some mistakes. I think that we play well, and I think that's kind of been our MO. I'd say our last 6 or 7 games, we've been playing well, but 5-10 minute lapses here and there. And, some of the better teams have been able to punish us, especially in the cluster. So, I think that definitely hurt us. And so I think that once we let up a goal, I think that we need to regroup, stay focused, and stay the course. I think once we kind of get punched in the nose, we don't know what to do. I think it takes us a little bit of time to find our feet again and get going. We need to be from the kickoff ready to go again. And I think that's kind of hurt us in the past, and even last year. I think that was kind of our bugaboo. We better have learned from last year. We better have learned from these mistakes, this year. To be honest, not too excited that we're making a lot of the same ones. And so it's, we got to be better.
Thank you. Joel Soria.
Hey, Chris. Good evening. There's been a lot of talk about whether or not the decision makers at the MLS HQ are either going to look at points per game, or they're going to let the teams that haven't been able to play as many games play their games later this season, or once the season ends for the majority of the teams. From what you know as a player, what are you guys focused on? Are you guys looking more at the points per game? Or are you guys looking more at just total points in general?
Well, to be honest, I mean, that is a great question. Don't get me wrong, but right now we're looking at 3 points against Salt Lake. That's all we're focused on. All we're looking at. That's out of our control. We have no idea what's going to happen. We don't know what's going to happen. So we have 9 points left that we can get, and we're going to go out there and try to finish with 9 more points.
Thank you, Wanda. We're going to take 2 more questions, starting with Alex Morgan.
Hi, Chris. Condolences on the loss, but thanks for speaking with us. It looked like the team sort of ran out of ideas in the second half. And this is the first time you've given up a lead like that in a while. Are you worried about the mentality and about the confidence, given that it's such a critical juncture in this season?
No. I mean, I think that there's definitely, when you're not getting the results, you have to look inward and try to figure out why you're not getting the results. And so can we be sharper in the final third? Absolutely. I think we're getting there. We're getting the crosses where the final looks are good looks. And I think that the majority of the time we can pick out that person, and that person will finish that shot as well. But, I think tonight definitely was not the case. I think we got a little too lax all across the board. I think we're expecting that second, third one to come and have it come easy. And it's this league's not easy. This credit to Vancouver. They came out and played extremely well, but they've been doing that now for the last 3 or 4 games. And so I think that was a mistake on us.
Thank you, Wando. One last question from Carlos Ramirez.
Hi, Chris. Carlos Ramirez from NBC Bay Area and Telemundo. You talked about making the same mistakes as last year on that final stretch of the season that didn't allow the team to get forward into the playoffs. How do you keep that from happening again, you as a leader of the team? And how do you temper those expectations with a sense of urgency and turning into motivation and not a suffocating feeling, I guess?
It's a great question. I mean, that's one. It's the $1 million question. What we need to do. It's on myself, captain, veteran. Make sure guys are ready. Guys are ready for the moment, ready to step up, ready to take that moment on. I don't know. I mean, I think that we've been playing well. I'm not sure if we just get a little tight, a little nervous. I don't know. I can't put my finger on it, but I hope we figure it out soon.
All right. Thank you very much, Wando. Have a safe trip home.
Thanks, guys.
There's the captain, Chris Wondolowski. He said that Vancouver was set up to go ahead and combat them down the middle, and the Quakes played right into the teeth of that. They punished the Quakes, rightfully so, and the Quakes could not hit the final pass. In the final third, they couldn't connect. They couldn't shoot. He said that they'd like to fix some mistakes, and especially in clusters, the 5 to 10 minute lapses here and there. And once they get punched in the nose, we don't know what to do, he said, even last year. And he said, we better have learned from last year And when Joel Soria had asked him about 3 points versus points per game in terms of what the playoffs looks like, he said, we're only looking at 3 points versus Salt Lake. And he said that point blankly to that question. We should be hearing from Matías Almeyda shortly. I'm joined by the rest of the team, Joel Soria, Alex Morgan, and Jamon Moore. Alex, what did you think of the captain's comments?
Yeah, Charles, I mean, I think you can always trust Chris Wondolowski to tell it like it is. He said that the Quakes were too lax all across the board in the second half, that they were expecting the second and third goal to come easily, and that they lacked the movement and intensity in the final third. And that second half collapse, it's just weird to me because Almeyda's strengths as a coach are supposed to be his motivational skills, that he creates a unique locker room culture. But he just wasn't able to do that tonight. The team went into halftime with the 1-0 lead, playing really well. And then whatever he says at halftime, it has the opposite effect of what he wanted. The Quakes started really poorly. It just felt like they took their foot off the gas pedal. You know, they weren't controlling possession as well. It was almost as if they got a little impatient and they just kept giving the ball away. And then once Vancouver scored those 2 goals, there was never looked like there was any way back for them.
Well, I'll just say it. There's 8 straight games where the Quakes could have secured a playoff spot and didn't. You know, that to me falls on leadership. This loss is largely on Matías Almeyda tonight, just as the 7 at the end of the season were last year. Some of those he lost his temper, lost his cool, ended up not being able to coach in the games. Kudos to him, that hasn't happened this year. But for a coach who's supposed to coach teams in big moments, he's not done that. He's fallen far, far short of that for me. And this was a night that better was needed. Better was needed from him in terms of his substitutions, in terms of the lineup that he selected, and better was needed from his team. And in a time when he should have been able to get more from them, he wasn't able to. And if he took Vancouver too lightly, shame on him, because Vancouver's won 2 of their last 3. They've won more games than LAFC this season. They've won 8 games. So this is not Vancouver, the pushover that I think fans think it is, and that the team maybe treated it as tonight. Maybe Matías Almeyda treated it himself tonight. This is a decent team, particularly when Cavallini can actually step on the field and is not injured. So if they took him too light, shame on him. Shame on Almeyda. Shame on the team. You better not make the same mistake against RSL. Better not make the same mistake for sure against LAFC, because if that's the case, you're looking at the Seattle Sounders' last game of the season. You aren't going to take them lightly for sure. Shame on everybody.
Jamon, I think it's really interesting how you bring up last season and how Almeyda sort of almost imploded last season, how his leadership style, the fact that he brought so much energy, got sent off in a couple of games, almost felt like a distraction for the team. And now tonight, it felt like the total opposite. It felt like he just disappeared at the moment when he was needed most. So I wonder if that's almost an overreaction a little bit. It just feels like, as you say, in these big moments, he's falling short.
One can also make the case that this was a very unusual / peculiar performance from the Earthquakes. I'll tell you why. I can't recall the last time that the Quakes went up in the first half, looked comfortable, looked like they were going to win the game perhaps, and then gave up 2 quick back-to-back goals in the second half. Alex, Jamon, I invite both of you to try and answer my question. When was the last time that the Quakes were in this position? Charles, you're invited as well. I can't think of the last game where they were in this situation. The Quakes being the favorites. First half.
Oh, I don't know if the Quakes have been the favorites in a while, but they did give up a lead against Colorado in September. They gave up a 1-0 lead, and they also gave up a lead in late August to the LA Galaxy. So that was the last time that happened. But I agree, as you say, it is a different situation this time, in that I think it's probably the first time, maybe this season even, that they were the odds-on favorites to win the game.
Well, not only prior to the game, but after the first half, right? The Quakes are the favorites. They are in the driver's seat. And the Quakes are they're not used to this. They're not used to playing in this position. So I think that also definitely heavily influenced tonight's outcome.
I'm not sure which disturbs me more, though, Joel. The implosion of last season or the fact that they just kind of got outplayed tonight. Last season, at least we could point to various factors and say, well, if they clean that up, if people don't get ejected, if we don't get a red card here or whatever the case is, now we've got our best players on the field for a home game against Philly rather than Wondo in the stands cheering with the Ultras. So tonight, it was a completely different type of thing. They just plain got outplayed in the second half. They just didn't bring it when the season was on the line. But how many more times in a playoff clinching situation is this team going to screw the pooch? I mean, it's happened now eight straight games with playoff points on the line. 8 straight games.
Well, see, the thing is that we can interpret it that way, but they're definitely going to cherry pick later on, right? They're not going to treat this as the playoff clinching match. They'll say we have 3-4 remaining games.
Yeah. But that's what we heard last season too, right?
Right.
Every time we talk to Almeyda, he's like, "Oh, we still have games in hand. We still have games coming up and things like that." And
but
they didn't get results in those games either, including 2 home games in the next to last and second to last games of the year.
But you're dead.
And look, this is Almeyda's second season in charge. There's no room left for excuses. I mean, Guram Kasia told us at the end of last year, there are no excuses next season. This is Almeyda's second season in charge. He should have figured out all of those issues last year. For this to happen, 2 years in a row is just inexcusable, I think, as Jamon is saying.
No, yeah, for sure. I think we're all in agreement. If the Quakes don't make playoffs this season, it's a disaster. 100%. They have to make playoffs, and there's really no other option. They have to clinch playoffs. I obviously still think they can. I think we all do. But tonight could have been one of those nights where, they seal the deal early on, they move on, and pressure's off. When pressure's on, the Quakes are extremely volatile. And I personally don't think that that's the best version of the Quakes.
And it's coming up against RSL on Wednesday, and we'll be covering that match live from Earthquake Stadium. I just want to get back to what you had said, Jamon, in your initial comments on this subject. And I think it speaks to the mentality of the entire team after going in up 1-0, and then also parsing that with what Joel had to say and just kind of connecting the two. I was actually just texting a friend on the side, and after they conceded the 2 goals, my buddy was texting me and he said, this was not going to be some sort of easy walkover against this Vancouver team. You're exactly right, Jamon. And to think that the Quakes, even though they've had a superior record over Vancouver with Matías Almeyda, and for the record, this is the Quakes' first loss against Vancouver with Matías Almeyda at the helm. And we talk a lot about on this show individual matchups against certain teams with Matías Almeyda at the helm, i.e. LAFC, i.e. LA Galaxy, and now i.e. against the Vancouver Whitecaps. And you're right, in the second half, it seemed like it was a little bit more pedestrian. It was a little bit more chill. They let their guard down. They switched off, and they conceded those 2 goals. And as Wondo said in his press conference, he says, we get smacked in the face and we don't know what to do. And so he's basically even saying there that the mentality has totally been switched off in that regard. And yes, the Vancouver Whitecaps deserved their 3 points tonight and deserve to get it. And sometimes in this league, some teams get one up over each other and, potentially can stay that way as that is in soccer and confidence against another team that you kind of have their number or whatnot, especially, with LAFC against this Quakes side. But the opposite thing just happened to this Quakes team, basically having this Vancouver Whitecaps number, if you will, and then the Vancouver Whitecaps coming back and beating them tonight and beating them in a game that did mean something because they jumped over them and are still jockeying for playoff places and potentially want to be able to move up.
Yeah, I would say that one of one of our blind spots is not really talking about the opposing teams. And really, we need to do a better job. I will commit myself to try to analyze the rival, in this case, the Vancouver Whitecaps tonight, as Jamon has mentioned, as Alex has mentioned as well on Twitter. Charles, as you just mentioned, the Whitecaps were the superior team. They played much better. Yes, they play differently to what we're accustomed seeing from Almeyda and his Quakes, but they get the job done. They're getting the job done for the past 4 games. They won 4 in a row against and a competitive RSL. And ironically, they turned a corner after the loss against the Quakes. That 3-0 loss at Avaya Stadium. They've been undefeated since, picking up 12 out of 12 points.
Here's the thing, Joel. I don't think that Vancouver Whitecaps outplayed the Quakes in the first half. I thought the Quakes were miles better than the Vancouver Whitecaps in the first half. They were bossing possession, and they were getting the ball into dangerous spaces. And they had this game in their hands, right? They had this game in their hands, and then they let it slip. And I think that's why we're frustrated, and that's why we're talking about the Quakes tonight, because they had this game and they let it slip. And they shut down Lucas Cavallini, who is Vancouver's most dangerous player. And I thought tactically they played very well in the first half. It was just that second half collapse is the reason we're talking about the Quakes like this.
I think it's the second half collapse, but I'm also going to go back to the shots on goal. So they had 10 shots tonight, only 2 of those are on frame. There was a wide open situation where Wondo laid off a beautiful ball to Christian Espinoza in the first half. Ball goes over the bar. So there were very few really good opportunities tonight. I think Wondo pointed out that they weren't very good in the final third. Yes, there was the goal, but beyond that, they were constantly, just a little thing off here or there in the final third tonight. They've gotten production and been able to spread that around the team. As Jake Pisani also pointed out before, 15 different players have scored for the team this season. But when it comes down to who's going to score in a clutch situation and put this team on their shoulders, right now, there hasn't really been a player to do that. More recently, the closest has been Andy Rios for that. But the Quakes are going to need somebody to step up for 3 games and put this team on their back and make sure that there are shots going on frame and there are balls going in the back of the net, and that they're going to need to be a much sharper team in the final third. You can't just get 2 shots on target and expect to be in the playoffs if that's what your output's going to be for the next 3 games. They have to fix that particular problem.
Jamon, historically, that player has been the eternal 8, Wondolowski. And this isn't a shot at Chris at all. But he has not been on it as of late. He's disappeared from the system. It's not centered around him anymore. And we're noticing that.
No, you're absolutely right.
There's moments that Wanda steps up, and he's been absent. Part of it I think a part of it's not his fault, right? It's him having to comply to a system that works more around players like Rios, like Espinosa, undoubtedly like Espinosa, and not Chris. And obviously, that means that, these big time goals need to come from players who are not Wondolowski, and they're not coming from those players at the moment, or tonight they didn't. And, when you want to bank on the best goal scorer that the league has ever seen, it's that much more difficult to get him the ball.
And this is where the Quakes not having another forward really hurts, because they're playing a system right now where they have to have both forwards that they really have on the field at the same time. You can argue Kate Cowell is capable of playing a 9, but we saw against Colorado in the 5-0 loss, he's definitely not capable of playing where Andy Rios is at and kind of occupying that defensive 10 space, right? And so you have to make a decision if you're Matías Almeyda. I got an out-of-form Chris Wondolowski, am I going to start Cade Cowell over Chris Wondolowski? I don't envy the decision. I don't think it's an easy decision at all. What you're hoping is that you can have the veteran leadership be able to get you through 2 home games right now. But quite frankly, they may need to make a decision to give Cowell a start in there to give Wondo a break so that he's a little bit fresher in case they need some output from him in the final game of the season in order to get over the line.
Jamon, I don't think you can start Cade Cowell over Chris Wondolowski at this stage. I think Cade's just too green, and I think that Wando's experience will be really key in these last couple games. But I do think that we should see Cade Cowell come off the bench earlier in the match, that he should be making these attacking substitutions and attacking changes earlier. And I also think that there might actually be more talk about changing the lineup against RSL on Wednesday heading into that game, because both Guram Kashia and Vako should be available. They returned from international duty last week, and on the broadcast, they mentioned that they should be available for that match against RSL later this week. And before the match, I would have told you I don't think either of them deserve starting spots, but I think Almeyda might need to make some changes at this point. I think that there could be a chance that we see Vako take the place of Wondo, and then maybe Rios moves further forward, or Vako takes Fierro's place out wide left. I think there have to be more questions now than there were before this game, because before this game it felt like Matías Almeyda had finally found his favorite 11, that he didn't make any changes from the team that drew Seattle. It's been a remarkably consistent team for the last couple of weeks, but this game I think calls a lot of that into question.
I don't think Wondo should sit 3 straight games as the starter. But keep in mind, he was at his best earlier in the season when he was used as a super sub. When he came on for that last 30 minutes, and that the only 30 minutes you asked from Chris was that last 30 minutes when the team needed a spark, and he was able to do it on multiple occasions. Since he's been starting in front of Andy Rios has been the much more effective player. Chris Wondolowski has been very absent. Again, I don't put this on Chris any more than you do. They've got really only 2 forwards right now, but I think that you might want to try a situation where you're bringing on a fresh Chris Wondolowski in the 60th minute in order to get you over the hump, get you another goal, either put a game away or be able to provide a spark if you get down or you have a draw.
Just a quick stat for all of you to digest. Wondo has been scoreless in his last 11 appearances. And in his last 5 games, he's only recorded 4 total shots. That's pretty bleak from the captain. Again, not a shot at him whatsoever, just a very telling sign that this team is not really centered around him anymore.
Yeah, who would have thought, right? They're dependent on outside backs and Carlos Fierro and Andy Rios. Who would have thought that at the beginning of the season? That's where the production has been coming from right now, and unfortunately, the outside backs had a night off.
Yeah, this team is very thin when it comes to center forwards. I think there was someone in the chat who was wondering where Danny Houston is. He's out for the season, and I know that we chatted previously on this show, but his contract's up, and I think that you lads chimed in that he might not be renewed for next year. But not even having a Danny Houston to start every other game or come off of the bench, really does present a problem, because a striker that can kind of get into the wide channels and hold the balls up there, etc., is an issue for this team. And just having a center forward that's able to do that. I think Cade Cowell can do that, but as Alex said, I think he's a bit inexperienced coming down the crucial matches, if you will, here. We are still waiting on Matías Almeyda as well. So just bear with us here. I'm not exactly sure where Matías Almeyda is just yet. He sometimes has been a little tardy to his press conferences after the games. So we will bring that to you live as soon as we have that, and as soon as we get that as well. And he was obviously on the sideline, and let's just talk a little bit about his body language tonight. He seemed a little bit more subdued and a little bit quieter than the usual Almeyda this evening. Maybe perhaps a little bit more methodical in his ways this evening.
I just think he disappeared, Charles. And it's not good when he takes this long to come out to his post-match press conference. When the team wins, when they get a good result, when it's a good performance, he's usually here within, 25, 30 minutes of the final whistle. But it's been almost an hour now since the match ended, and he's evidently still talking to the team, digesting this loss. And I think when the team lost 7-1 to Seattle back in September, we literally waited like an hour and 45 minutes for his post-match press conference. It might not have been that game, actually. I think we were live on Black and Azul after that game, but we've waited a long time for him in the past, and it's never good news when we've had to do that. And the other thing about Matías Almeyda, we're talking about the mentality tonight. It makes me think of the comments he made last weekend after the draw with Seattle, about how he said that he was almost hoping that this season would end because it's been such a long, harrowing season, and all of the it's so tiring for everybody. And it just makes me wonder whether that messaging hurts this team, or whether, those doubts or that tiredness that he's sort of harboring is hurting this team, and in this crucial moment.
It could be. I just, Matías is he's a very intense character, right? And I do believe that these type of outcomes definitely influence the way that he's feeling. I'm not too sure if he's analyzing the game with his team or if he is drilling his team. And, either way, though, I think this is a bit inexcusable. You can't, again, be tardy to a press conference in this manner. It seems like no one has notified him, or he's just willing to pay the $200 fines that the MLS HQ is imposing on him. Tough to say.
Last time I believe there were formal complaints, and he showed up within like 10 minutes for the next press conference. I don't know if that did it, but we've seen this from him before. Keep in mind that the team does have a flight to catch tonight, and so the clock's going to tick on that. I'm not actually going to be shocked if for some reason we don't see Matías Almeyda tonight if he spends too much time with the team, and then all of a sudden there's a plane sitting on a runway and they have to run out. I just won't be shocked by it anymore.
That's just inexcusable, though.
We didn't hear from him midweek.
Oh yeah, I know we pushed. So all the fans know we pushed. All three of us pushed very hard for a midweek press conference from him, because we have actually not gotten to ask him any questions that's not related to a result of a game in months. Really since March, we haven't had that opportunity to talk to him except at the end result. So just so everyone's aware, we are behind the scenes trying to push for opportunities to be able to talk to him about things other than the particular match on that night.
And we did just get a note from the Quakes PR that he should be coming shortly. So we'll keep our fingers crossed. And Joel, I'll throw back to you.
That's great. That's great. Thank you for the update, Alex. Well, I just wanted to quickly bring up the comment that you made up earlier, Jamon, regarding, I guess, just the general audience thinking that tonight's game was going to be a walk in the park for the Quakes. We're obviously experiencing the unexpected at the moment. I was definitely in the camp that the Quakes were going to win, without a doubt. We had been talking about this time and time again leading up to tonight's match. The Quakes have a handful of games coming up, and the easy 3 points look like these 2 games against the Whitecaps, potentially the game against RSL. And look at what we have now, right? The Quakes matched up with the Caps in terms of points and in points per game, and with the Rapids and right behind them. In fact, above them in points per game, the Quakes are almost on the outside looking in. Who would have thought? But it could be. The reason why I bring this up is that it could easily be that Almeyda and company, and I don't want to go too far in the assumption here, but Almeyda and company could have thought, this could be 3 easy points for us. But then again, that probably wasn't the case, and I'm speculating, and I probably shouldn't do that.
I mean, at some point, I think their actions, speak for themselves, Joel. The way they came out in the second half wasn't good enough, and I think it was indicative of the fact that they didn't take the game seriously enough. And I think Chris Wondolowski said as much. So I think you're absolutely spot on.
Yeah, and to that point, at the end of that first half, Vancouver was probing a bit. They were creating some chances, and I thought to myself, well, are the Quakes going to get out of this first half up a goal? Obviously at halftime, I got myself a glass of water, came back, listened to the halftime program, presented, of course, by your Northern California Honda dealer. Shout out to them. I don't know why I did that, but I just did. Wanted to have some fun with it. With that being said, you're completely correct, Alex, Joel, Jamon. It has to come down to mentality and thinking that you're going to walk over a team and you're going to beat them, and being up 1-0 and being able to just get through to the end of the half doesn't mean you won the game, and doesn't mean that you won the 3 points. It just doesn't.
Yeah, I think that's right, Charles. And I just briefly want to address a chat we have here in the comments from Luis. I think there's a bit of confusion about, how secretive Almeyda has been about his plans for this team. To clarify, he did invite us at one point to attend one of their training sessions and to speak with him in more depth about the team. And all three of us followed up with the club. All three of us followed up with him about that, and it never happened. He dropped the ball. He didn't follow through on that promise. I know one of the other reporters that cover this team, Robert Jonas, said that offer felt disingenuous. And that sort of secrecy has been a theme throughout Almeyda's tenure. He's barred us from attending any sort of training sessions. I know Robert Jonas has actively been kicked out of the training field, even though it's the norm in Major League Soccer for journalists to be able to watch training, attend training, and regularly interact and ask questions to the coaches during the week. But that has not been the case for us. And obviously, as John Jay says in the comments, it's difficult because of COVID, but there are ways to work around that. I know other teams are hosting midweek Zoom calls with the coaching staff, or they are finding ways around that. But the San Jose Earthquakes and Matías Almeyda have not.
Well, the thing that we also asked for was, because we can't attend practice, can we get these midweek press conferences? And so that, because he was saying that the media doesn't understand his system. And it's like, okay, that's great. What is it we don't understand about it? And we were just like, we're here, talk to us about it. And we had these 2 midweeks where there were no midweek games to be able to have those conversations. We pushed for it both times. It didn't happen either time. We also asked for Jesse as an alternative. That also has not happened, even though that Jesse, when he came to the press conference a few weeks back, said that he wanted to talk to us. Well, it's 10/24, 5 days before the secondary transfer window opens. We haven't heard anything about potential signings. It would be nice, even if it was, hey, we decided that we're not going to be able to do that, and we're going to defer all the signings till after the season. But instead of something forthright, so far, at least, we've got nothing. Now, I think they're both stand-up guys in general, but unfortunately, we've given them a platform to be able to have these types of conversations. We had the time this past week, and it didn't happen. Now, we just got an update from Quakes PR that we are expecting Matías Almeyda to join in a couple minutes, so it could happen anytime now.
And just to that, Jamon, Alex, Joel, we've chatted about it a little bit off camera in terms of what the expectation is in terms of us as media and covering this team and covering Matías Almeyda and covering the protocol for what it looks like as press conferences. And certainly huge differences between here in Major League Soccer, the Premier League, Liga MX. And I think that that's also important to note that, while Matías Almeyda may invite us to watch training at some point or, allow media in to watch training at some point, but it's still going to be controlled regardless. And he's not going to stand on the side talking with us, giving us his, tactical noose and giving us his, tactical Bible, if you know what I mean. And there are some teams in England that got caught, even doing this. And I can speak back to Leeds United spying on Derby County about 2 years ago, with Bielsa spying on Frank Lampard's team. So I think managers also at the same time, they want to protect their tactics. They want to keep them close to the chest. Now, I'm not saying that as me defending Matías Almeyda with any of these, but I'm just saying that managers do that. And it's not like Pep Guardiola is going to just let us in and completely give us the full, the full spectrum of what he's running. So we have to kind of be balanced in the way that we talk about this and the way that we do this when it comes to that. With that being said, obviously, we're at 56 minutes now on this program. We're still waiting for the manager to show up for his post-game press conference, and would be really nice to hear from him soon. So hopefully very soon, we will bring you that press conference. We are Black and Azul. My name is Charles Wollin, and up in the right corner is Joel Soria. Bottom right corner, Alex Morgan and Jamon Moore is in the left. For some reason, I didn't think that there were subtitles, and of course, I probably forgot that there was. But that's our team, and Jason Sholl runs this program. He's our executive producer and director. If you can, just give us a like, and if you can, tell a friend about us and subscribe to our program as well. Tell a friend, tell your nieces, your nephews, aunts, uncles, plenty of folks about this. We want to grow this, and the idea and intention of Black and Azul is to cover the earthquakes, and also we want to build our community here online with people that follow and appreciate the earthquakes and build community. And now we have Matías Almeyda, so we'll hear from him, and we'll be back to wrap up the show after he's done. Thanks.
We'll start by taking a few questions in English and then a couple more in Spanish. So let's go ahead and get started with Alex Morgan.
Hi, Matías. Condolences on the loss, but thank you for speaking with us tonight. You guys were pretty dominant in the first half. You go into the half with a 1-0 lead, but then it falls apart in the second half. What happened? Why did you guys unravel like that?
Dominó el primer tiempo, fue al entretiempo con la ventaja de 1-0. En el segundo tiempo eso se cayó. ¿Qué pasó y por qué pensás que el equipo se desarmó en el segundo tiempo?
Sí, primero, buenas noches.
Firstly, good evening.
Coincido bastante en lo que dices.
I agree quite a bit with what you say.
Creo que hicimos un gran primer tiempo.
I think we had a great first half.
Donde nos pusimos en ventaja.
Where we had the lead.
Donde estábamos interpretando cómo jugar el partido.
And we were interpreting how we should play the game.
Y después volvimos a cometer el error que habitualmente ha tenido este equipo.
And then we went back to making the same mistake that this team has habitually made.
Que en 5 minutos, digamos, entra en una desconcentración que el rival aprovechó.
That in 5 minutes there's a lack of concentration that the opposition took advantage of.
Después, una vez que se pusieron en ventaja, creo que el partido empezó a tener otra forma.
And then once the opposition took the lead, I think the game happened in a different way.
Y no pudimos identificar el último pase para marcar el empate, inclusive para un poco más.
And we weren't able to find the final pass to get the draw or even a little bit more.
Thank you, Matías. Let's go to Jamon Moore.
Good evening, Matías. Thank you for taking the time to meet with us before your flight. My question for you is really about that 5-minute stretch and the second half in general as well. Do you feel that your players took Vancouver potentially too lightly felt that they had the game in hand and let the foot off of the gas pedal, so to speak, during that time? Or do you think it's more just a lapse of concentration? What is it going to take to get players to play all 90 minutes? Thank you.
Pregunta sobre esos 5 minutos del segundo tiempo donde Joel dio vuelta el partido. ¿Vos pensás que los jugadores de San José subestimaron al rival porque simplemente fue una falta de concentración y que se necesita para que los jugadores jueguen concentrados los 95 minutos?
No creo que fue a propósito, eso no.
I think it was not on purpose on that.
Creo que empezamos a fallar en el control del juego.
I think we started to miss having control of the game.
Cuando uno empieza a equivocar pases y nosotros teníamos la profundidad con nuestros laterales y nuestros punteros por arriba.
Started to miss passes, and when we had combinations with our fullbacks and wide players.
Y sabíamos que por el medio, por abajo y pelotas frontales nos sacábamos diferencia.
We knew that through the middle, low balls or straight long balls, we wouldn't make a difference there.
Sabíamos que no teníamos que cometer faltas cerca del área.
We knew that we should not commit fouls close to our box.
Pero bueno, es fútbol, a veces sucede, el rival aprovechó esos 5 minutos.
But it's football, sometimes it happens, and the opposition took advantage of those 5 minutes.
Y después el segundo tiempo realmente fue bastante parejo, porque tampoco es que tuvieron muchas llegadas, ellos tampoco.
And then besides that, the second half was pretty even because they also didn't have too many chances.
Pero el fútbol se gana haciendo goles más que el rival.
But you win in football by scoring more than your opponent.
Y eso es lo que hoy hizo Vancouver.
And that's what Vancouver did today.
Creo que en esos 5 minutos equivocamos el camino.
I think in those 5 minutes we messed up during the path.
Y muchas veces dentro de la cancha
And many times in the field,
hay que tomarse unos segundos para respirar, pensar
you have to take a few seconds
y reacomodar cuando sabemos que no estamos bien.
to stop and breathe and fix yourself up when things are not going the right way.
Pero bueno, ya el partido terminó y veremos lo que hicimos bien, porque hubo muchas cosas que hicimos bien, sobre todo el primer tiempo.
But the game has ended, and we'll look back and see what we did right in the game because we did many things right, especially in the first half.
Y lo que dejamos de hacer más que nada el segundo tiempo.
And more than anything, what we stopped doing in the second half.
Thank you, Matías. Let's take one last question in English from Alicia Rodriguez.
Thank you. Matías, it sounds as though the mentality maybe came into play in the second half, and not being able to keep up, avoiding mental lapses and whatnot in the second half. Is that how you see it? And are there any other specific lessons that you get from coming out of this game with 3 games to play?
Suena como que fue falta de concentración en algunos momentos del partido. ¿Y a vos te parece que fue eso? Y si después de partidos así, donde hay faltas de concentración, si vos aprendés algo que usarás para los siguientes 3 partidos que quedan.
Yo no sé si fue falta de concentración.
I don't know if it was a lapse of concentration.
Fue falta de dejar de hacer lo que veníamos haciendo el primer tiempo.
It was a lapse of we stopped doing what we were doing in the first half.
Porque no fueron 45 minutos,
Because it was not 45 minutes,
sino que fueron 7, 8 minutos.
they were 7 or 8 minutes.
Hay virtud del rival
There's virtue from the opponent,
y hubo poca contundencia nuestra para poder liquidar el partido cuando íbamos 1-0.
and there was little relentlessness on our part to kill the game when we were up 1-0.
Nuestra manera de ser de acá hasta el final es la misma que cuando íbamos perdiendo, la que fuimos ganando. Nos mantenemos una línea media.
Our way of being going forward is going to be the same way we recovered when we were losing, and the way we were carrying ourselves when we were winning. It's the same mentality.
Y como les dije, después del partido pasado también, el anterior, nosotros estamos tratando de terminar de la mejor manera este torneo.
And like I said, after last match and the match before that, we're trying to finish this tournament in the best way we can.
Y quedan, 3 partidos decisivos.
And there's 3 decisive games left.
En 2 semanas podemos estar de vacaciones
In 2 months, we can be on vacation,
o podemos continuar un poco más.
or we can continue for a bit more.
Mientras tengamos chances, lucharemos hasta el último segundo.
As long as we have our chances, we will fight to the last second.
Thank you, Matías. We have time for just 2 more questions, so let's take 2 in Spanish. First, Joel Soria, and then Carlos Ramirez.
Buenas noches, Matías. Joel Soria, desde San José. como pintan las cosas en este momento, creo que San José va a estar al borde o dentro de esos playoffs en 2 semanas. A mí me da mucha curiosidad, Matías, en saber si usted sabe cómo es de que la gente que hace decisiones dentro de la liga vaya a elegir a equipos que se metan a la postemporada. Se va, ¿cree usted que se va a dar por puntos por juego o puntos en general, sabiendo que hay equipos como Colorado que han jugado 6 juegos menos que el San José, pero tienen más puntos por juego?
Bueno, yo creo que en realidad acá pasa por un análisis personal y de fútbol. Si aquellos que, digamos, hemos tratado de mantenernos al margen del COVID hasta hoy, y hemos jugado cada 3 días, creo que se debería pensar bien, porque el haber jugado mucho sería una desventaja en este caso. Entonces, no sé cómo se decide, porque en realidad no sé si todavía está claro o se está pensando, pero sí no me parecería bien que aquellos que jugamos más partidos, que viajamos más, que entrenamos poco, más allá de que el COVID lo puede agarrar cualquier persona, me parecería ahí que sería una desventaja para aquellos que trataron de hacer mejor las cosas o que tuvieron más suerte.
Thank you. Last question to Carlos Ramirez.
Profe, un fuerte abrazo. Carlos Mauricio Ramírez de Telemundo y NBC Área de la Bahía. ¿Cómo le va?
Un abrazo, Carlos. ¿Cómo estás?
Profe, hoy fue su partido 58 como técnico de los Quakes en partidos oficiales por puntos, no cuento amistosos. Y por vez número 24, hoy, profe, su equipo marcó primero. De los 58, ha marcado en 24 veces primero. Y es la octava derrota en esos 24 partidos cuando su equipo marcó primero. 6 fueron fuera. ¿Le parece que es un buen balance? O sea, ¿cree que es una relación o que debería ser mejor o está conforme con que de esas 24 veces que su equipo marcó primero, le hayan revertido 8?
Bueno, está muy claro que hay que trabajar más y que en vez de hacer un gol hay que hacer 2 o 3. Entonces ahí, de esos 8, seguramente achicaremos el margen a 5. Bueno, para lograr todo eso, yo sé bien internamente lo que estoy pensando con respecto al futuro, pero no puedo dejar de pensar que quedan juegos por delante, pero sí tengo un análisis muy profundo de cada día que he estado y que estoy en San José.
All right. Thank you very much, Matías and Augustine, and have a safe flight home. Thank you, everyone, for joining us. We will see you on Wednesday night.
Hi there. Thanks, everybody, for tuning in to episode 68 of Black and Azul Live, post-game following the Quakes 2-1 loss in Portland at Providence Park against the Vancouver Whitecaps, succumbing to 2 goals in the second half within a span of 6 minutes time. You just heard from Matías Almeyda. He said that he wanted his team to take a few seconds to look up and breathe when things don't go their way. He also said, I don't think there was a lapse of concentration. There was a lapse of 7 to 8 minutes. There was little relentlessness on our part when we were up 1-0 to kill off the game. He also said there's 3 decisive games left, and in 2 months, we can be on vacation for a little bit. As long or more, or we keep on going. And as long as we have our chances, we will keep on fighting. So there you have Matías Almeyda. I'm joined by the rest of the team, Jamon Moore, Alex Morgan, and Joel Soria. Joel, what did you think of the manager's comments tonight?
Well, I'm going to go ahead and stick with what I asked him about. I try to pick his brain a little bit on the, I guess, TBD format for clinching playoffs. And I asked him whether or not he thought that it would be a good idea to qualify teams based on their points per game as opposed to their total points. And he mentioned that it would be a bit unfair to do so in the former way, right? Basing it out of points per game, considering that those teams have probably, or the teams that are in given points per game have probably traveled less. Like in the Quakes, in the Quakes sense, you know, they've traveled a lot more than a team like the Rapids. They've played 7 additional games to what they've played, and you know, they've actually have experienced somewhat of a regular season, you can say. So yeah, he was heavily opposed to that idea. He was not really sure what was going to be happening, echoing what Wondolowski was also trying to tell us all when I asked him about that. So yeah, I thought that you know, Matías he looked disappointed. Obviously, he looked frustrated. But then at the same time, you know, he's a little lax as well. You know, he knows that the team still has three games to play. Jamon, as I mentioned earlier, you know, they're not going to treat any other game besides the final game of the regular season as the playoff clinching spectacle, right? You can ease your way through the last or the upcoming 2 games, and then, you know, if everything's on the line, the final game of the regular season, then that's when you'll decide to take it seriously. At least that's how I interpret it all.
Yeah, the problem with that, Joel, is of course RSL is right on their heels, right? And if you give 3 points to RSL, you know, you're not going to just be able to walk into that last game and still be in a position to be able to get 3 points on the road, you know, against Seattle, and be able to for sure say you're in the playoffs, particularly if, as you said, they decide that they're going to try to play some additional games after decision day. Now you're pretty much at the mercy of those outcomes. You're watching games just to see if you can go on vacation or not, right? And you know, so it's you know, I understand that, you know, for teams particularly that were playing Colorado, and Colorado was not able to play those games, that, let's say, punishing a particular team because they couldn't play Colorado, and that's the reason they didn't make it into the playoffs. I can kind of see some sense into that. The problem is, if you take a look at home and away points in this league, and we didn't really prepare any sort of chart or anything for this, but teams aren't playing an equal number of home and away games. So, right. You know, I think, and I don't know if this is up to date, I have to take a look, but have the Quakes played 20 games at this point?
Yes, correct.
Okay, so this must be live then. So right now, the Quakes have played 9 games at home for a total of 11 points. Okay, on the road, 11 games for 13 points. So take a look at that and go like, okay, first off, they're not going to end up with the same number of home and away games. They're going to play at least one more away than they will at home. And the other part to that is that they just haven't done a good job in securing points in home games. They've only lost 2 games at home, but they have a lot of draws. Most of their draws, or maybe even all their draws, have come from home games. And where they should be taking 3 points, they're only taking 1. And I believe we talked about this in the preseason as well, that they needed to fortify their home. And I realize that the fans aren't there, but they're pretty much not there for anybody that they're playing right now. And, you know, unfortunately, they haven't gotten the job done. Now, all of a sudden, they have to get 6 points at home in order to be able to make sure that they're in the playoffs.
It's one or the other, right? You're either really good at home or you're really good on the road if you want to be a perennial threat in this league. You look at teams like Philadelphia, who are really good at home, really, really good at home, haven't lost at home in like the past 6-7 games or ever since they came back from MLS's back. And then you have Toronto FC, who's really, really good on the road. And suffered their first loss on the road actually tonight against said team, 3-0, I believe, or 5-0 lopsided defeat up in the Northeast. And then you have teams like the Sounders, right, who are particularly good on the road as well. So, yeah, I mean, the Quakes for the last couple of years were known for being a really, really good home team. And this time around, they've been a mixed bag. And being a mixed bag in this league with so much parity is just not – it's not a good concoction. So we're obviously seeing the deficits of that.
Well, look, Joel, they've got a home game on Wednesday, and they need – to win it. And I think the way that MLS should handle this situation is that they should disinclude Colorado from the playoffs because they've only played 14 games. I think it would be unfair to teams like the Quakes, who have played so many games back to back in October, if they were to lose out on making the playoffs because Colorado beat them on points per game. But then I do think for the teams that were scheduled to play Colorado, like Vancouver, like RSL, and weren't able to do that, and so they've only got played one fewer game. I think for those teams, then it should turn to points per game. I think that only makes sense. And then just briefly, I had some thoughts about Matías Almeyda's press conference. When he's in a more reflective mood or when he's more emotional and intense, I think he offers he can offer some really surprising insights. And often we'll launch on these long philosophical soliloquies that are really insightful. I don't think that was the case tonight. I thought it was a pretty straightforward press conference. And in the end, I just think that, this team's performance spoke for itself tonight, and that it's going to come down to Wednesday night. The team will speak for itself on Wednesday night, and his coaching will speak for itself on Wednesday night at this crucial juncture in the season.
Yeah, I don't think we're going to be hearing more proverbial tangents from Matías in the upcoming weeks. I think that he and a majority of his players are definitely going to, uphold those cards close to their chests and just kind of ride out the next couple of weeks. And hopefully, I'm sure they're going to be looking to get the final word on us, right? They know that we like to be insightful and that we like to be objective. And they're always just looking at a moment to pounce. So, hopefully they're able to qualify because, we know how much you, the viewer, cares about this team. We know that you want the Quakes to make it to the playoffs again, or not again, but you want them to make the playoffs given that they've only made the playoffs twice in the last handful of years. So, it's not going to be easy. But I can dare to say that I think that they're in control of their own destiny, if and only if MLS HQ isn't willing to screw someone over.
Well, one example of imbalance is RSL. They've played 12 home games. They've played 7 away games. And potentially a couple of those were supposed to be against Colorado. I haven't taken a look at what games that they haven't played in order to catch up. But they only have 6 points in 7 games on the road. That the Quakes need to walk away with 3 points. It is going to be, of the 3 games, it's the one where they should feel the most confidence to be able to walk in and be able to get 3 points. Obviously, LAFC is going to have to be a dogfight, and Seattle, is going to be Seattle. So, this is the game that they've got to do it, and they're playing a team that's not that's one of the weaker teams on the road in this league. And but this imbalance of home and away, Seattle's 11 home games, I think 7 away games as well. So there is quite a bit of this imbalance that's going on in this schedule. It was one of the reasons that the Supporters Shield Foundation had decided initially they didn't want to do a Supporters Shield, was because of all these different imbalances, and now they've kind of flipped around on that as well.
Yeah, I think the Supporters Shield absolutely should be handed out this season, because this regular season matters. Despite all of the craziness with the way the season has played out, this regular season matters. This loss to the Vancouver Whitecaps matters, and it puts the Quakes in a really pretty dire situation. I think they need at least five 5 or 6 points from these next 3 games to be able to clinch a spot in the playoffs. I think it's still in their hands, but they're going to need market improvement from tonight's performance to be able to clinch a playoff spot. And there's only a week and a half left in this season, so it's now or never for Matías, Almeyda, and co.
All right. So we'll see everybody on Wednesday for our next broadcast here, Black and Azul. We will be coming to you live from Earthquake Stadium, so make sure that you like, you subscribe, and you tell a friend about Black and Azul as we're coming down to the home stretch as well. This Wednesday, October 28th, 7:30 p.m. kickoff, and then on the weekend, Sunday evening against LAFC, and then decision day on November 8th at 3:30 p.m. Pacific time. So there you have it. We'll show you the table one last time as well here for the San Jose Earthquakes. There you see them in that 8th position, right there just below the Vancouver Whitecaps, and they play Salt Lake on Wednesday. So an opportunity there for them. And as Joel said, they still have it in their hands as well. Just want to remind everybody to take care of yourselves during this very challenging time. We hit a record number of COVID infections as a country on Friday evening. So make sure that you wear your masks, wash your hands, and encourage others to do the same. This is one of these things where we're all in it together. Obviously, this virus is not done with us and us as people. And I know that I'm probably preaching to the choir of people that live in the Bay Area, Santa Clara County, Oakland, San Francisco, Marin, and a little bit further south as the rates have not been as high as the other parts of the country. But we still got to take care of ourselves and still set the example for the rest of the country, because that's what it is right now when leaders don't really step up. Secondly, make sure that you vote. I've said this the last couple times on the previous programs, but if we want to complain and we don't vote, then our voice doesn't really matter. So make sure that you vote. I actually had the chance to vote today. I voted early at San Francisco City Hall. Really nice experience. I had the pleasure of going a little bit later in the day, so there was not a line. But of course, you can mail in your ballot. You can vote early as well. Check your county's voting center so that you might be able to vote early as well, or go to your precinct or your polling station on election day as well. So just want to wrap up on those thoughts. And for the rest of the team, Aaron Sholl is our associate producer. Jason Sholl is our executive producer, director, and the skipper of our merry band here. The rest of the team is Jamon Moore, Alex Morgan, and Joel Soria. My name is Charles Wollin. Please stay safe, everybody. We are thinking about you during this challenging time. And virtually, we are just sending you one collective wave of positivity as much as we can during this. And thanks again for tuning in. Your support really means a lot to us. We can't say it enough. Cheers. Have a good night. Good night.